something to say, got something to say.
Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Our House 21, and I decided today to put together what I'm calling Speedruns 101, the Our House Definitive Guide to Speedruns. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because, well, partially in support of my man Ray Luna over there with the 70 plus mile an hour speed club. So, I really appreciate the work you're doing over there, trying to recognize the guys who are doing good work with their RCs, being creative and coming up with good solutions to great problems. But it seems like a lot of the guys are kind of feeling around in the dark, and if you look at some of the speedrun videos, you see some really interesting interpretations of what is safe, what is practical, and what is, the kind of some ways, some kind of dangerous ways of getting your data taken or getting your runs accomplished. So I decided to put this together as a resource just to help people out, to try to help people to guide their runs so that they can get out there, accomplish their goals, but also be safe and do things in a more methodical way. So we're going to hit a few topics today. Number one, rule number one, always have a plan. And we'll talk a little bit about what goes into a good plan, how to execute it, and how to get everything done. We're also going to look at location scouting, requirements for the type of run that you're going to do, and just some rules of thumb in order to try to keep yourself safe. We're going to look at some test equipment ideas, also suggested field gear, so things that you need to bring along with you. And then also talk a little bit about test discipline, how to keep yourself on track and keep yourself from making a costly mistake. And then hit the big discussion of the day, safety. Just kind of look at ways to, like I said, keep yourself, the people around you, and your hardware all in one piece so you can go out there and enjoy yourself. And lastly, just kind of as an add-on, I'm going to talk a little bit about GPS versus radar, making sure that you collect your data properly. And because I've been seeing a number of videos out there where people are getting some inconsistent results between GPS and with radar, and I think a lot of that has to do with their test setups. So I'll talk a little bit about that, just give you some background information as to why things work and why things don't work there, to try to help you to get some more consistent results in your overall testing. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. So, first off, let's talk about the plan. Speed runs are field tests. This is the same thing that scientists and engineers have been doing for centuries. Getting out there, making a goal, and then trying to see what your stuff can do. So, first things first. Rule number one: never go into the field without having some kind of plan. So, always have a clear goal in mind. Elite RC cars, and when I say elite, I'm talking about high-end vehicles that are, when you do the math, they're producing anywhere between 2 and 7 horsepower. These are real hardcore machines, and they can cost anywhere from $500 to well over $1,000. And wrecking these things waste a lot of time and waste a lot of money. So don't throw your cash away, because you didn't plan well. A little bit of forethought can save yourself a lot of pain and a lot of trouble in the back end. So sit down, make clear goals, and understand that different goals will require different plans. So if you're going out just to do shakeout runs, do a practice session, then you're going to have different location requirements, different hardware requirements, different test equipment requirements than if you're trying to set up and do a record attempt, and try to get the world's fastest 3S Rustler or something like that. So, like I said, take a little bit of time, figure out what you're trying to accomplish, and that will make your run work a lot easier. Don't go off half-cocked. Going off half-cocked kills cars. And we're trying to keep you from killing your cars or other things. So when you go into the field, try to use a build-up approach. And what I mean by that is crawl, walk, then run. So, no matter how good a builder you think you are, nothing works perfectly the first time out of the box. you have to get out there, and especially when you make a major change to your configuration, you have to get in there and feel it out. Learn how you've changed your car. Feel like you understand the car. It's basically like a marriage in a lot of ways. You're trying to relearn your vehicle, and then once you've understand it and know what works and what doesn't work, then you can build on it. Don't just make a big change and then try to jump for the record, because things have a tendency of not ending well. Take the time, dial in your configuration. It can save your car, or it could save the people around you. You know, Also learn from your mistakes. My motto is fly, fix, fly. It's the way you do business. You make your goals, you make an attempt for your incremental goal, and you might hit it or you might not. You might go down in a spectacular blaze of glory, but that's okay, because you need to pick up, figure out what worked and what didn't work, turn that around, make your design improvements, implement that improvement, and then try it again. Fly, fix, fly. It's a cycle over and over again. And if you follow that process, you're going to hit your goals. But, it's a commitment, because in order to get that, you have to be willing to do some homework. So I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and and that's YouTube is a great resource to get great ideas, to see what other people are doing, what's working and what's not working. Also check the forums. Now, I know some guys are not too keen on the forums, just because there are a lot of the purists don't necessarily care for us speedsters and the crazy things that we try to do with our hardware, and that's okay. For me, I really enjoy the creative aspect of this, but you get creative ideas from all different sources. So cast your net wide, learn as much as you can from as many sources as you can, learn from other people's successes, but also learn from their failures. And there's some really good videos of really spectacular failures out there. But ultimately, we're not here to pussyfoot around. You know, the point of this is to go hard or go home. You know, we want to have big goals, and nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you don't put it out there, you're not going to get it back. So, you have to be willing to reach a little bit and to push hard. And sometimes you're going to hit a wall. Sometimes you're going to hit a problem that you're not really sure how you're going to get around. But that's why this is a community effort. That's why people like myself, and there's too many people to really name, but that's why we're all putting our videos out, to share information, to try to help each other out, give each other ideas, have some good cross pollination, and to encourage each other. To help give us a little bit of extra motivation, and sometimes to help us get over those little humps. So, you know, get in there, engage in the community. You're really not in this alone. There's people like myself out there who are willing to, pitch in a helping hand if necessary. Reach out to us. Most of us will write you back. I've had some really great interactions with some great guys out there who've given me good suggestions, or just given me good words of encouragement to help keep me motivated. And it's really made me feel like I belong to this community. So in that tone, it helps to motivate me to make more videos, because I want to contribute to the people who've contributed to me. So, like I said, this isn't an individual effort. We're all trying to do this together, and the more we help each other out, the better results we can all get. So next up, talking about locations. As I mentioned before, different goals have different location requirements. So your plan really dictates the needs for your location. If you're trying to do a speed run, so if you're trying to hit 100 miles an hour, a car at 100 miles an hour will actually cover the distance of a football field in 2 seconds. You're going at about 150 feet per second. At 70 miles an hour, you're going to cover that same distance in about 3 seconds. You're going at roughly 100 feet per second. So if you're getting out there and trying to do your doing balls out, record attempt speed runs, you're going to need a pretty long run. And I'll get into that in just a few minutes with some rules of thumb of how to set the distances that you need for your runs. But whatever you're doing, make sure you have enough space to hit your goals. If you're just doing some bashing, testing, things like that, then you can probably get by in a much smaller space. But if you're trying to do your speed run, you need to make sure that you've got room allocated for acceleration, some space that you can sustain your top speed and get a good measurement, and then still have adequate space in order to do your braking and get down from speed in a safe distance without hurting yourself or hurting property or putting civilians in danger. So, like I said, testing runs, practice runs, bashing around, just feeling out your configuration, you can squeeze that into a much smaller space, and you can do a lot of that at much lower speeds as well. But know what your plan is so you can be in the right setup and have all the right preparations in place so that you don't go off half-cocked and you don't end up doing something that you regret later. So now, after you've done all your groundwork, you're ready to do your speed run record attempts. For a speed run, you really need to have an acceleration zone, you need to have a speed trap, and then you need to have a good braking zone. So for your acceleration zones, you need to make sure that you allow enough distance for your cars to get up to speed without spinning the tires. Now, I mentioned before, elite RC cars, we're talking power to weight ratios that make supercars look jealous. And Google it. There are YouTube videos out there of people with X01s or other high performance cars, actually out accelerating Porsches and Ferraris. I've done the math, and a car with a good setup can actually accelerate from 0 to 60 in less than 2.5 seconds. That's hypercar territory. So, but you need to have everything dialed in and plan it really well in order to do that. And when you're trying to have your vehicle leaned out for a speed run, you might not be in the right configuration to have that rate of acceleration but still maintain stability. So it's best to ease into that. Take as much time to accelerate up to speed as you can, because also by doing that, by having a slower acceleration curve, you actually end up pulling less current from your battery. So you have a lower voltage drop. So you can actually achieve a higher top speed. Just getting to the line and just blasting your throttle, you're actually putting a lot more load on your system, which reduces your system voltage, which can actually detract from your absolute top speed. So it takes some technique. You have to work at it. But nailing that acceleration zone is critical. So take as much time in this room as you can. But one thing I've learned from my testing is try to allocate at least about 1.5 times the distance of your speed trap. If you can get longer than that, that's even better. But as a minimum, try to take that 1.5 times your speed trap distance. So back to your speed trap, what's that all about? Well, when you look at the Bonneville Salt Flat or other high-speed record runs, these guys oftentimes use timing lights. So like the dry lake bed speed runs, for example, will oftentimes have a standing mile. So you have as much distance as you can deal with in order to get up to speed, but then you have to hold that speed for a mile. So they take your time that you use to travel that mile distance, and then they calculate an average speed, and that is your speed for the area. But if you're using a GPS, that's not really the way it works. But the concept of having a speed trap is still persistent, because GPS units, most major commercial GPS units will actually update their speed at a rate of about 1 sample per second. So in order to be able to get a reliable measurement, you need to hold your speed for at least 2 seconds. So if you're traveling at 100 miles an hour, which is 150 feet per second, you must hold your top speed for at least 300 feet in order to guarantee that you get a good measurement. Similarly, if you're going for 70 miles an hour, you have to hold that top speed for at least 200 feet. If your speed trap is less than that distance, there's a very good chance that you could hit your top speed, but you don't actually have a measurement at that top speed because you didn't happen to line up with the GPS's cycle. So, in order to guarantee or at least give you high certainty of getting a good measurement, map out that speed trap, have the right distance allocated, and use that distance to calculate a good acceleration zone. Put a little bit of margin on top of that, and then that will dictate the amount of space that you need for your total run. So rolling that into the braking zone, these cars will, they accelerate quickly, and most of them will decelerate pretty quickly too. But try to be safe. Do some testing. This is why doing testing runs is important, because you want to make sure that when you get up to the high speeds, the car has enough ability to pull itself down from speeds and do it in a controlled fashion. Braking too hard can actually upset cars when they're at high speed, because if your suspension is soft, for example, it can cause a shift in the weight balance from the front to rear, and that can cause it can cause an imbalance that can actually cause your car to go airborne. So I remember Too Quick for You had one interchange where he was discussing with people that he's actually he turns his braking down to about 10%, because he has typically very long road courses that he uses, which allows him to be able to decelerate more gradually, and that helps him to keep his cars more stable. So if you've got that luxury of having time, use it. So as a simple rule of thumb, I try to make sure that I set aside at least half my distance, at least half my speed trap distance for braking. That's actually pretty short, but especially since a 70-mile-an-hour run can actually take place in less than about 7 seconds, and that's from starting to run, max speed, and braking, all less than 7 seconds. So when you're talking about extending that to 100 miles an hour or 150 miles an hour, like some of the guys in the office and such, they're up to about 140 or plus. So these runs are really quick. So it doesn't give you a lot of time to correct, and doesn't give you a lot of margin of error. So you have to plan that into your run. So like I said, the better you do your preparation and the more time you spend, practicing, getting used to your response, learning how your vehicle responds, the better you're going to be able to deal with unforeseen circumstances, the cleaner your runs are going to be, and the higher your chances of actually accomplishing your goal without breaking things. And before you make your run, prep it. Prep your area. Make sure that the pavement you're going to run on is clean and free of debris, and it's nice and dry. Don't run through a puddle. That's a recipe for disaster. Even small surface imperfections, rocks, gravel, things like that, can upset your car and cause it to either go airborne or go careening off the course. So a good rule of thumb or a good practice is to do what we call in the aviation community a FOD walk. FOD means foreign object debris. So, in the good old days of flight test engineering, you would see before a test flight, people would actually line up hand to hand and walk the runway, from start to finish, picking up all the little rocks and pebbles and pieces of garbage that might fly into an engine intake that could cause a jet to have a problem. I'm not saying you have to be that extreme with it, but you want to, be familiar and comfortable with your track or with the pavement you're going to run on, to make sure that you don't have any large FOD, any large debris, any large obstructions or imperfections in the surface that can cause your car to either take damage or cause your car to lose control. It doesn't take that long to do, but it could definitely save you a lot of time, a lot of money, or a lot of injury or heartache. So another thing to do is identify a good pit/driver's box location. So this comes down to driver style. You might be the type of person who likes to set up at the starting line and watch the whole run happen, from one end. You might like to set up towards the end of the braking zone. I personally like to be, more in the speed trap. But, you know, whatever you do, identify a good location, make sure that you have safety zones around it. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But also take the time and either find reference points or physically mark your zones. So give yourself some driver's cues. And the race car drivers do this all the time, where they know that when they get to a certain place of the course, that's where I start my braking. When I come around the corner after I hit my apex, this is where I get on the acceleration. Find some reference points. They make your job a lot easier, especially in runs that last just a matter of seconds. You don't have a lot of time to process information. You have to kind of get into a rhythm and be able to just react based upon the information that's coming to you. So little driver's cues can really help you to nail it. It's a good practice. Give it a try. Also, when it comes time to picking out your course, I see a lot of the guys in the videos are using public roads. My preference is to avoid public roads if at all possible. The problem is for a lot of us who don't live in large deserts or places that have ginormous shopping malls, it's very difficult to find clean, pristine tracts of pavement that are anywhere between 700 and 1,500 feet long. So you have to resort to the roads. And like I said, there's a lot of guys out there who get really good results on public roads, but just be really careful out there because it's an uncontrolled environment. So if you're on a public road, if at all possible, try to use spotters. Try to get yourself into a pattern where you are checking the area, you're making sure that the area is safe, and if you do have a civilian coming into the area, you have a plan to get your car off the track, how to abort a run so that you can save your car or you can avoid causing injury to the intruder's vehicle or their person. So we don't want to get out there and we don't want to hurt people. We don't want to hurt ourselves and we don't want to hurt our cars. So come up with a procedure. These are highly personal. Your plan is going to be dictated by the area that you run, but get into a good system of spotting dangers around you, spotting hazards, and figuring out how to avoid them. And there's lots of videos where you see the guys where they see someone turning in a quarter mile down the road, so they pull off the side and wait for a certain amount of time till the traffic clears. Just get yourself into a good pattern of behavior where you're being safe and you're being cautious, and you'll probably be okay. But my personal preference is not to risk it and to try to use a more controlled environment if at all possible. But that's actually been holding up my runs now because my controlled environment isn't usable right now, so I have to find a plan B. So all right, but again, when you're setting up your runs, make sure to include plenty of runoff space to either side of the flight path. So what I mean by that is when you set up your run, try to make sure that you have enough area on to either side of the vehicle so that if your car does get upset, if you spin the wheels and you end up going into a flat spin, if something unforeseen happens, that you have enough room on either side of the vehicle where it won't fly into onlookers, into personal property, etc. I violated that rule early on in my 70 plus mile an hour carnage videos, where you see I didn't have enough runoff space on the side, so I broke the rear end of the car free. The car spun and I slammed into a curb, and you could tell the amount of energy at play there because my 5-pound RC car took out a significant chunk of concrete from a concrete curb. If that was a person, that would have done a lot of damage. So be safe with it. A broken component or catching air, those things could cause the car to go in all sorts of strange directions, at very high speeds. Try to keep yourself and observers out of the runoff areas for your own safety. just use good practices. Be smart about it. You know, remember, ultimately we're about having fun. We're trying to do some cool things. Nobody wants to have emergency room visits on their heads. All right, so here are some good recommendations for test equipment to bring with you on your runs. And remember, keep a good rule of thumb in mind. Good gear makes for good test. Don't bring junk hardware into the field. You will regret it later. Trust me. Now, what I mean by that is, good gear doesn't always have to be expensive. So just think about how you run. Think about the things that you usually use, the tools that are handy to you, and shop wisely. Be creative. You don't have to spend a gajillion dollars on the super duper high end thing that you saw someone use in a video when you have something in your workshop that you can make for $2 that does the job just as well. Just be smart about it. Vehicle telemetry. This is a biggie for me because I'm an engineer and I like data. So I always recommend having a good, reliable GPS. That's going to give you consistent, glitch-free data. I mean, you probably seen the videos of the guys where the GPS loses lock or it doesn't. You get erratic behavior on some of the units that some of the guys use. Try to keep on a good quality part. I personally I use Garmin automotive GPSs. These are not really the best for this application because they're not as durable and they're not as rugged, but they do give good data at high speeds. A lot of guys use the fitness GPSs. So these are guys that are made for like running and hiking and biking. They tend to be really durable and really reliable. They're also nice and small. So I will highly recommend those based upon the videos that I've seen other people use. The downside is some of them can get a little costly, and you're actually paying for the small size and the ruggedness. I kind of started using these. My specific unit is a Garmin 260W. I like it because it has a nice big screen, and I'm able to use the automotive mounts and Velcro on my vehicles and get a nice, good, solid mount. And I now actually own several of them because I was able to spot some good deals on eBay. So I have spares. So if I break one, it's not the end of the world. I also recommend bringing some kind of voltage meter in the field. You could be like me and have an inline unit that can constantly measure your voltage, or I've seen some other solutions out there where you have these little numeric displays that can also serve as like low voltage buzzers, and those are actually really cheap and they're pretty durable as well. So there's lots of options out there. You can also be old school and unplug the battery and check it with a multimeter. But doing these periodic battery checks just will give you a good idea about how much juice you have left in your cell, and if you need to, adjust your course of action or your plan based upon how much power you have in reserve. Now, optional things. I make YouTube videos, so I've recently gotten into ruggedized onboard cameras. So you can use these in two ways. You could do first-person video, POV videos. So I actually have picked up a couple of cameras just recently, and I'll go into those on subsequent videos. But you can use those to get extra footage to flesh out your YouTube videos, add a little bit of drama. Or you could also possibly use an onboard camera to look at your instrumentation to give you in-run onboard monitoring of your systems. So that's something I'm trying to work out right now. It's easier said than done because inside these cars is also a pretty high vibration environment, so it's tough to get nice stable video. But I'm trying to figure some things out there, so you'll see that in the upcoming videos. So other random things, some suggested items to have in your pit. It's a very good idea to have an IR thermometer, and that's going to help you to monitor your ESC temperatures, your motor temperatures. So that's going to help to make sure that you're not overworking your equipment, because as you guys know, overworking your ESC and overworking your motor can cause them to fail earlier. And it's also probably a good idea to use it periodically to check what your pavement temperature is. And that's just kind of a discipline thing, because Warmer pavement tends to be stickier than cooler pavement. So by doing a quick measurement of what the surface temperature is, you can, after a little bit of experimentation, you can get an idea of how the tires you're using react to certain temperatures. So you know that if you've got a nice hot surface temperature, tire brand A might not grip as well as tire brand B. So, the Jayco foams might work better on warm pavement, but the GRPs might be better when it's a little cooler outside. That sort of thing. So these are things that you learn from experience, but a simple tool can help you to dial in your setup so that you can get an overall better result. Another little thing to have, I like having a fish scale in my toolbox. That lets me get a quick measurement of the vehicle weight, but it also lets me do things like do a quick traction test, so I can see, are my tires hooking up? So that will help me dial in a little bit before I get on the run. And also, if you're into making videos like we are, then it's also a good idea to have some good video camera in order to document your run. And that could be a camcorder, it could be like a GoPro or another ton of the personal video recorders out there, or your smartphone. My videos are actually pretty much all filmed on my smartphone. I have a phone with a pretty good camera, HD camera on it, and it's also got built-in video stabilization. Built-in video stabilization. So it makes pretty good quality videos. I'm happy with them, but there's tons of other solutions out there. So when you actually go into the field, I recommend having what I call a Go Box. And this is basically a mobile workshop. Think about it as a rolling toolbox that you have everything in that you need in order to do field repairs, diagnose problems, what have you. This is I broke down in the middle of nowhere and I got to get myself back up running resource kit. So to that end, I recommend having a nice quality tool set, something that has, everything that I need to fully disassemble or reassemble the vehicle, high quality parts. So something that's not going to strip out after I get through 5 bolts. I buy a lot of stuff off eBay. Some of the tool sets I've picked up are really good. Some of them are garbage. So you don't really know sometimes until you actually get your hands on it. But if you have 3 little tool kits and 2 of them don't work very well, don't bring those into the field. Bring the good one. Also, bring spares, accessories, or anything that you might need in order to make band-aids. Quick field repairs. So things like when you happen to have one of your hot glue tires separate from itself at 60 miles an hour, you want to make sure that you bring another set of wheels that you can swap in and keep yourself going and not in your day. Little things like that. If you're going to be making long sessions, bring along a charger or chargers. If in the case like a person like me, where we have multiple cars in the house, or if I'm making runs and my son's making runs and we're doing multiple things, having a multi-charger. So I have an Onyx twin pack charger. There's plenty of others that are out there that are more reasonable in price, but having something like that, you can have packs being refreshed while you're doing your main runs. It's just a nice thing. It's not a requirement, but it can make life a little bit easier. Also, I strongly suggest getting yourself a set of LiPo bags. I'm not a stickler. I admit I don't always charge my LiPos in the LiPo bag, but LiPo bags are definitely the safest ways to charge and transport batteries. And I'll emphasize on the transport aspect of it because, I tend to like to use the Genzace hard case packs now because it gives the cells themselves a little extra protection, a little extra armor plating. But if you look up some YouTube videos, you can see where guys have punctured LiPo batteries either on purpose or accidentally, and once a LiPo gets punctured, it turns into a little stick of dynamite. So They're great for what they can do for your runs, but they're not the safest thing in the world. So use the lipo bags. They're just a better way to go. You know, there are risks that are worth taking and there are risks that aren't worth taking. For a couple bucks, you can get a quality lipo bag. I say that's a risk that's not worth taking. Buy them, use them. I'm off my soapbox now. And lastly, this is something that I just recently stumbled upon, the importance of. And get yourself a makeshift alignment kit. And what led to this this revelation was the fact that on my Slash off the body car, I was pulling to one direction, and I could correct for it in my with my trim, but it was just annoying. So finally, I just sat down. I've got a cheap RPM camber gauge, and I actually used a straight edge and a carpenter square in order to measure my toe in, and my car was way off. And I think that it came from the fact that I was at the time going back and forth between a basher configuration, so high ground clearance, and a speed configuration, and I wasn't giving a good alignment every time I did that. So once you change your vehicle's ride height significantly, it changes your entire suspension geometry. That changes all your parameters. So you end up having your camber, in the wrong spot, and so your tires are tilted in the wrong direction, which can adversely affect your performance. And it can also change the vehicle's toe, so how much the wheels are either pointed inwards towards each other or outward away from each other. So spending a little bit of time setting your car up so that your suspension geometry is just right actually can make a night and day difference in the handling of the vehicle. It took me about 10 minutes to do a complete alignment on the car, and now it tracks laser straight perfectly. So going into test discipline now. This is how you keep yourself out of trouble. So make a plan and stick to the plan whenever possible. If you're going out to just do bashing and testing, you may not have brought the right equipment that you need or have your car in the right setup to do your absolute speed run. So, think about what you're going to be doing, plan for that, and stick to your plan, and try to avoid the temptation to do something that you aren't ready for yet. Just because you just had a great run and got 78 miles an hour doesn't mean that you need to change your ESC setting and go flat out and try to get to 120 in the next run. Probably a bad idea. So also, in the lines of having your plan together, set go and no-go criteria. So, and most of this is going to be stuff that's related to your conditions. So when you go out, if it's raining, if it's windy, if it's wet, if there are kids running around across your speed run area, don't push it. You don't want to risk hurting yourself or hurting your car or hurting other people. And similarly, perform a good pre-flight inspection of the vehicle. If you have a known problem and you don't have a good workaround, or the workaround that you tried isn't working, it's probably best to wave off and not push it. Have backup plans just in case. So if you can't get your main objective, try a secondary objective, still have fun, but use your head, keep your wits about you. Don't get go fever. And that's where you're just so excited about doing your run that you don't think and you do something stupid, and you end up breaking perfectly good hardware because you knew that you weren't ready, but you wanted to try anyway. And I admit freely, I've been a victim of that. My Google Plus profile picture, shows what happened when I got some go fever when I first got my Rustler and nearly destroyed it. It's tempting. You have everything there. You've been waiting for the opportunity, and everything doesn't line up, but you decide to still go ahead and give it a try, and it doesn't work out. So in those situations, you really don't have anyone to blame but yourself, unfortunately. But you know, but you can save yourself a lot of agony if you just stop, catch your breath, think about it, say, is it worth it? And finally, to the big point, and I've been hitting at this a little bit. Well, not a little bit. I've been hitting at this a lot over the course of this discussion, but try to keep safety in mind. Safety is job one. You know, have a plan is rule one, but safety is job one. An out of control car at high speeds can cause serious property damage, personal injury, or even death. And I don't want to be morbid, but seriously, an 8-pound vehicle at 100 miles an hour striking a living being can do very serious damage, especially if that living being is an animal or a small child. You don't want to have that on your conscience. It's better to do the thinking, do the planning, take precautions, and have a clear head than to walk around with regret because you did something really stupid. So try to keep bystanders out of harm's way. That means clearing out your flight line, keeping runoff areas and keep away zones, you know, briefing the people along the way. Don't step in the street when the car's coming. Things along those lines. Try to get uh, procedures in place. If you have people around, deputize them, make them part of your ground crew, have them be spotters for you. Make sure that they keep kids and animals and people out of the way. Have them call out when the car comes onto your track. Use them as your extra eyes and ears. Take advantage of the resources around you, but do everything that you can to make sure that you're playing it safe and that you can keep a clear head and a clear conscience. And this is just something that is I've also learned along the way. When you are lining up for these really high-speed runs, you might have to send your car way off into the distance in order to get in order to have your run lengths that you need in order to hit your goal. So make your cars as easy to see as possible. That works for you and it works for the people around you. So that's part of the reason I have my neon orange color scheme on my vehicles. It's they're high visibility colors. They catch your eye, so so I can see those cars off at a distance. Other people can see those cars off at a distance, and it helps everybody to be just a little bit safer on the ground. Your starting line could be as long as a quarter mile away for some of the really high speed runs. If your car is black on black pavement, it could be really easy to lose track of where that vehicle is in the course of a run, and that can cause you to make an error that could cause you to lose the car. So that's a simple thing that could really help you out. But the big takeaway is don't take any unnecessary risk. You know, this is fun. This is, taking these cars to extremes that they weren't necessarily intended for is a blast, but it's inherently dangerous. So do your homework, do your preparation, make sure that you play it safe. You can still be crazy within reason. So just like I said, try not to take any unnecessary risk, and everything's probably going to work out just fine. So lastly, well, I mentioned this at the beginning that I would spend a little bit of time talking about the differences between taking GPS speed measurements and using a radar gun. Now, as I mentioned earlier, GPS takes samples at a rate of about 1 sample per second. So in order to guarantee that you get a good speed measurement, you need to have a speed trap that holds your maximum speed for at least 2 seconds. Ideally you want to hold it for even longer than that. That gives you a little bit of margin in your in your run, so that if you don't hit it exactly right, if you don't hit your profile perfectly, you can still get a good number. But at the very minimum, you need to have that 2 second speed trap. With radars, it's not necessarily about the distance of your speed trap. It's all about the angle and about radar gun placement. So if you look at my little diagram here, I've sort of mapped out a notional 70-mile-an-hour run, which can be, 600 feet or greater, based upon, my rules of thumb. So if you have your radar gun positioned right at mid-run, which a lot of people do, you probably will never see your car's maximum speed. And I've actually seen that on several YouTube videos where you have the person with a GPS on the vehicle and a speed gun on the side of the track, and they might be off by 10 or 15 miles an hour. And they're looking at each other like, what happened? Is the radar gun right or is the GPS right? Well, turns out they're both right, and that's because if you're positioned at the wrong location, the radar gun can only measure your speed at the location that is measuring. So as you can see from the diagram here, if you're located at mid-course, you're still in the acceleration zone. So your car might not have even reached the top speed yet. But if you move over to the end zone, so if you have your radar gun down at the end of the track, you can actually get good visibility over the entire run. So you have a much higher chance of getting a good measurement while you're in your speed trap, which is awesome. The downside is having your radar gun at that position is also dangerous because now you're right in harm's way. You have the vehicle coming at very high speeds right at you. And as I mentioned before, the entire run at these speeds is usually, less than 7 seconds. So it doesn't give the person with the radar gun a whole lot of time to react and get out of the way. So for this reason alone, I like using the GPSs because I don't necessarily, like having people staring down the barrel of a loaded gun. But, it's you can use some good discipline, and you can have the radar gun off to the side a little bit towards the end of the run, so it still lets you get a good amount of coverage, but protects the person a little bit better. But I kind of like having the direct measurement right off the vehicle. So that's just my personal preference. All right, so once again, this has been a long one, but I hope that you guys find it useful and help you find it interesting. And again, give me feedback. Comment in. This is my longest video so far, but I tried to make it pretty information packed. And so again, give me comments. Let me like or dislike. But if you choose to dislike, give me some feedback as to what worked or what didn't work for you, and I'll try to correct it the next time around. But I've tried to hit some important topics here, and and the primary one has been safety. This is a great hobby. These are awesome things that we build, but we have to take the responsibility to make sure that we take the precautions necessary to keep from injuring someone or destroying property or just causing someone to have a really bad day. So and that's all I'll say about that. But ultimately, like I always say, remember the mantra: get out there, have fun, break it, fix it, do it all over again. Remember to fly, fix, fly. And this has been a very long, extended version of an Our House production, but try to keep everything in mind, try to use the rules, and get out there and do some great stuff. All right, Our House 21 signing off as usual. Fly, fix, fly, and I'll see you guys next time.